Don't you understand anything at all? Oliver yelled at his wife, Mia, unable to control his rage. How dare you get pregnant? Who gave you permission to get pregnant? We had agreed that everything would go according to plan. First the house, then the kids. Or do you want to drag them around with you to the scheme apartments? Yes, Oliver, come on. I don't know how it happened. She doesn't know, Oliver said. What am I supposed to do now? Not only am I responsible for you, now I have a child. I mean, you're responsible for me. What do you mean? That you're sitting on my neck of the woods and you think it's all right. Everything you have is bought with my money. That's it, that's what you think. Well, then I'll have the baby for myself and raise it myself, and I'm not in a position to continue this conversation. Mia turned around and went into her room, closing the door behind her. The resentment burned a red-hot coal. How could he say that? Do that to her for 5 years she had done nothing but listen to Oliver, catching his every word, guessing every wish, tried to be not just good, but the best wife. And now she had to tell him something that was not in his plans. He went into such a rage. Maya listened, forcefully slamming the front door. She stepped out and sighed heavily. Oliver was gone. He was gone. Then the woman sank down on the couch and cried, bitterly and hopelessly, as she had cried as a child when she was small and defenseless, hurt by other children from the orphanage where she had grown up. That she had met Oliver seemed like a small miracle. He was so handsome and successful was a dream for many girls, but he chose her. They met on New Year's Eve in the square when people were partying and dancing, not distinguishing who knew whom. Oliver was with his company. Mia, on the other hand, came alone. It was the first New Year's Eve she had ever seen outside the orphanage. Cheerful Oliver immediately attracted the girl, and she spent all the holidays with him, though she did not allow him anything extra. It was her inaccessibility that conquered the guy, and in 6 months they got married. 5 years had passed since then. But only now Mia began to realize that she was in a golden cage. She was entitled to what Oliver wanted and loved, and all her wishes were simply ignored. They were considered frivolous, unimportant, silly, and yet she loved him, trusted him, and valued him. Because he had lifted her out of poverty. And also because Oliver had proved his love to her by marrying her against her parents' wishes. The memories wore Mia down, and she fell asleep. But Oliver did not return for the night. First he sat in a bar, then he went to a club. Some girl hooked up with him there, and he spent the rest of the night with her, cheating on his wife for the first time. Where were you? Mia asked Oliver when he showed up at home in the morning. What do you care? He muttered, not wanting to explain, not wanting to justify himself. Oliver, how could you? Mia asked him quietly. She understood, she guessed. She didn't have to explain. And what did you want me to do? You're the one who got on my nerves, and now you're pretending to be the victim. Don't do that, honey. We're adults, and I want you to understand that once and for all. And I'll tell you something else. As long as I support you, you'll do as I say. Personally, I don't want a baby right now. I want to live for myself without having to deal with the problems that will arise if he is born. So here's your money. 1 o'clock. Do you have an appointment? I've arranged for an easy abortion with no repercussions. Anyway, be good. Mia didn't say anything. Oliver looked at her and wanted to kiss her, but she turned away. He grinned and made his way to the bathroom. Then he changed his clothes and left for work. When he returned, however, neither Mia nor her things were there. On the nightstand was the money he had left for the abortion. On one of the bills was written by your conscience. A year passed. Oliver was still living his life of pleasure. He remembered his wife, missed her. He sorely missed the comfort she provided for him. Oliver's new girlfriends were different. They didn't want to burden themselves with anything, and it was beginning to irritate him, tired of constant easy relationships. One morning, he came out of the apartment and saw a baby carrier with a baby in it. The baby was asleep. There was a note on the side that said, "William, if you can give it to an orphanage yourself." Oliver was taken aback, then ran down the stairs. No one there. Upstairs, silence. Then he carried the baby into the apartment and clutched his head. He understood everything. Mia had given birth to her son and dropped him off because he had done wrong to them. She was left without a livelihood. It was hard to raise him on her own, so she found a way out. But what is he going to do with him? The child hollered and cried. Oliver stared angrily at the unexpected surprise and suddenly realized that there was no bottle, no pacifier, no diaper with the baby. Then he left him alone and rushed to the drugstore for everything the newborn baby needed. The first 3 days were hell for the newborn father. He didn't have time for anything. He barely slept and didn't understand anything at all. Somehow he bathed the baby, wandered around the apartment with him in his arms, and learned how to make formula. But on the 4th day, he couldn't take it anymore. He gathered up William's things, put him to bed, and drove to the orphanage, counting on getting there toward evening to drop the baby off unnoticed. He drove 70 kilometers in the firm belief that he was doing the right thing. But when he arrived at the place and came to the door, confused, he still put the carrier on the doorstep, turned around, and went to the car. But after taking 10 steps, he turned around and almost ran up to his son. A minute later, they were driving home, where Oliver fed and changed the boy. And then suddenly he burst into tears, realizing that he was broken and would never be the same again. Month after month went by. An elderly babysitter sat with the baby during the day. In the evening, Oliver rushed to see him himself. He had long ago registered the baby, having given a lot of money to make sure everything went smoothly. He tried to find Mia, but couldn't, and decided she was out of town for good. When William was 6 months old, trouble came to their home. The boy became very ill. Doctors, when they examined him, found a serious illness that could have ended very badly. Oliver almost went crazy. He sold everything he owned, the business car went into debt, took out loans, but managed to cope. He cured William by paying for his treatment abroad. And when he returned home with his son, he realized that now he would have to start all over again. For a long time, Oliver worked as a simple security guard, then became a driver for a wealthy businessman. They paid him well, and he slowly paid his debts, slowly recovering from his experiences. Several times he got together with one or another woman, but they all wanted his attention, refusing or not knowing how to take care of William. You know what one said, "If you want, I'll give you my kids, but I don't have the joy of taking care of your son. He's been sick for a long time. Don't you feel sorry for him?" Of course I do, but I can't help it. And I don't believe a strange woman could love him as her own. But he still hoped he'd meet one someday. When William was 6 years old, Oliver began to look at courses for his son in preparation for school. And by chance, he met a woman who had already chosen a program for her daughter. "You know," she advised me, "I found a good teacher. She takes any child. Do you want my number? You can sign up too. Thank you very much. I'll call you right away." Oliver got a quick answer, and an hour later, he was invited to an interview. He hurried to the address, but when he crossed the threshold, his ex-wife Mia was standing in front of him. "You?" He could only utter the words. "How? What are you doing here?" "Working." "So this is how you willingly raise other people's children while abandoning your own? You miserable cuckoo. Do you know what I had to go through to get our son back on his feet? William was sick, and while you were having fun, you know, I was taking care of him. I sold everything and got into debt, which I'm still paying back. And you lived on your own and didn't even think to come and see if we needed help. You're a cunt, Mia, a real cunt. And I don't want you anywhere near our baby. William is just my son." An angry Oliver turned to leave, but he heard Mia's quiet voice. No, Oliver, you are wrong. William is not your son and cannot be, because my daughter was born that night. What? What did you say? It was my revenge on you, Oliver. You've always thought only of yourself and loved only yourself. Remind me how you insisted on a reversal, hoping to get rid of our child. And you had no respect for me, either. Spent time with your mistresses without thinking how much it hurt me. I left to save our baby girl, and when it was time, I gave birth to a beautiful baby girl, Lily. My ex-girlfriend gave birth with me. She was raised with me in an orphanage, and she was even more unlucky than me. She gave birth to William by some married man, but she didn't survive the birth. I took her son away. I nursed both babies for the first few months, and then I decided to give him to you. I wanted you to feel what it was like to give up or give up your son. And you didn't. I followed you. I saw you take him to the orphanage and come back with him. After holding him in your arms, you couldn't leave him. I admit I was surprised. I didn't think you could take it, didn't break down. But you did, and I'm glad I did. Except now, you're faced with a second choice. Now you know that William is not your son. What are you going to do now? Go on, raise him as your own, or leave him. And the note? There was a note. I remember it verbatim. You wrote that William was my son. It said, William, if you can, give him to an orphanage yourself. And that he was your son. You made that up yourself. You're so cruel, Oliver said, not believing his ears. Yes, but you made me that way. I won't tell you about the tears I shed and the sleepless nights. Don't think I've had a wonderful life. Neither have you. I've been through everything. Only unlike you, I had no job, no place to live, no money. For a long time, I lived on child support. Then I bought an old, cheap laptop and wrote papers on demand. Then I became an online tutor. Business slowly, but went. And now I've opened courses to prepare children. That's how you made me strong. You, Oliver, often rebuked me for being on your back. Now I don't need you. And neither does our daughter. I want to see Lily. Okay, here's my address. Mia wrote down the street and the house on a piece of paper. She handed it to Oliver. Oliver took the piece of paper and left, stunned crushed by what had happened. For so many years he had been a chump, a real chump himself. He had been laughed at, dragged around his finger, humiliated, stupid, how stupid. Oliver came home and threw the keys on the nightstand in a sulk. Then he turned and saw the look in William's eyes standing in the doorway. What's the matter? Daddy? Are you upset about something? No, my darling. Oliver hugged his son and realized that he had made his second choice. Get ready. We're going to visit. An hour later, they were standing on Mia's doorstep. And she, smiling, invited them in. Dad, who is that? William asked. With all my eyes, I looked at this beautiful woman with kind eyes. This son, your mother. And now she is going to introduce us to your sister and my daughter. Oliver spoke to an astonished Mia. Yes, my dear. Oliver leaned toward her and said playfully in her ear, and this is my revenge on you. Especially since we never got a divorce. You'll have to live with us. And I'm not going to let you go anywhere. And also, he added, in all seriousness, thank you for my daughter and my son.